Welcome back to the imaginary gallery, the gay world of narcissism. Tonight's discussion is actually from a viewer. I received a message regarding a specific situation, and I am now here to address the situation. We won't give out any names, we won't give out any locations. We'll just use the story, which can be considered familiar to us all, possibly. So we'll go through the message, and the first message I got about this, after discussing the fact I would cover it, was he'd said that his particular city is rampant with dysfunctional gay men, that there are very few single guys, and most are equipped with spring-loaded wedding attire. Most local guys prefer to be partnered in completely open relationships, which to him sounds like friends with benefits, or partnered with boyfriend hopping placeholders. I firmly believe this is better to feel alone. It is better to feel lonely because I'm alone than to feel lonely because I'm with the wrong guy. So he was asking if I took the request for the video, and I said yes, and responded that he then told me the story about what was going on, which is he was friends with this person online for 8 years. They lived in different parts of the country. They talked on the phone occasionally, and the other guy helped him evaluate his own situation with another cluster bead monster, though neither of them knew the science involved. Common. But he moved to such and such city in 2004 and never expected to meet the online friend in person, but that online friend just happened to move to the same city about 10 years later. This guy is a gay and was staying in an extra room at a local gay couple's house. And the person I'm responding to would get together with this person for social visits once a week, would go to the gym, didn't make love, and the poster believes that he was the only real friend this guy had in town. Well, evidently, this guy that he met told him that one of the guys in the gay couple had made advances towards him, which he thwarted and then was promptly evicted. Sounds typical. And what he refers to it as the bad person. He says the bad person in question is a guy who helped his friend move into the bad person's house. He had known the bad person in years past, and the bad person had also hit on him as well while they were both in separate monogamous relationships. Sounds like typical cluster B. But also he says two of his closest friends have had a similar experience with this bad person who evidently likes to get into a relationship with one person and then seek out others, which I've covered in other videos. The poster and his friend had a regular social activity at the gym, and the bad person tried to get the friend to stop, but the friend refused. And that's an attempt at control, but we'll cover that in a moment. But the friend had said that he and the bad person were in a relationship as of the time that they moved in together. And his friend had lots of bills, and the bad person took the opportunity to rescue the friend financially, which was quite a deal with the devil. Well, since the bad person could not get the friend to stop all the social activity, he insisted on just joining as well. But on several occasions, the bad person tried to sabotage his own participation, which the friend understood and then eventually said would end his participation as well. And during this process, the poster I'm responding to said he recognized many of the bad person's actions and tactics from his own former partner and tried to warn the friend that he's in a dangerous situation and gave him details of what he could expect to occur as the situation evolved. Now, his friend has been fortunate to have survived other unrelated challenges, is very self-confident, and was sure he could handle the situation, as we all do. Well, in September, he could tell that the bad person was up to something and made a note of it in his phone. And in December, the bad person did what was predicted, created drama, made this poster look like the villain, and he warned the friend that he was being manipulated. And the bad person had tried to manipulate him as well previously, though he would not allow it. So he was trying to be the voice of logic, and the bad person felt he had to silence this voice of logic, which is typical with these people. That's the last time he saw his friend, and soon after, the friend and the bad person blocked him on Facebook the same day, and his friend still posts on Facebook and Instagram, but he believes the bad person is actually monitoring all of his friend's activities and communications, so he hasn't contacted them because it'll be intercepted. The other part here is that his friend has a gay family member in the eastern U.S. that might have the means to provide a refuge for this, but that guy also unfriended him shortly afterwards, so he believes that the bad person probably went to him and said, "Take him off your list. He's evil," or whatever they say. So basically, his friend had talked about how he had been put onto antidepressants before they had lost contact, and that may prolong the ordeal with the bad person. And this poster feels helpless and seems to be one of the few people who actually understands what's going on, and he's completely isolated at this point with the bad person. And he doesn't have much hope of helping his friend. How could he? But it's hard to deal with knowing he's on a horrific journey that is likely to damage or destroy him. So, that is the backstory. So we will start at the beginning, and I'll address each little point. First off, he talks about his city and how it's rampant, which we covered, but dysfunctional. And that's one of the things I talked about in a different video, that yes, it's very dysfunctional because, I'll say it for the third time, there is no June Cleaver, Ward Cleaver, to use as a role model, because you got two guys together, which is not the same as the guy who meets the lady who has to put on his best face for her like a kid going to Sunday school, and mommy says, "Okay, don't be obnoxious like usual, behave for this hour." Well, with two gay men who have probably spent their life hiding what they were in fear of opposition, and so they become experts at hiding things by the time they're like adult age. And those skills come in handy for the cluster B because they continue them. But yes, I understand how a lot of guys are always looking for the next best thing, and many of them will pick someone that has a few things that they can benefit from and will put on their mask of "I'm in love with you," so they'll move in together, and then they'll of course have their security blanket, and then when everything is secure, they'll start seeking someone else, which is what I believe is happening here in this particular story, because the bad person involved has been in a previous relationship and then secretly on the sly would pursue somebody else who's in a relationship. And again, this is crazy because it's not like the male-female balancing situation. It's like two males, which is completely different dynamic, because males are hunter-gatherers. Males want to get what they want, and through the socialization process, many of them learn that they're not really supposed to have everything they want, but others don't accept that. So we continue, and he says they were friends online, which I've understood, people you never actually expect to see. And then the person moves there, so you get to see them in real life, and it's interesting. And then, of course, this friend had moved into this couple's house, which we just mentioned, how boys like to form a couple, maybe buy property together, and they're basically in character 24/7. So they have like their own ulterior motives of, I've got to have a boyfriend, I've got to have a place to live, I've got to have someone I can share money with, I've got to, they want the basics covered, but it has nothing to do with what they really want, because they want to chase someone new, and that's thrilling. So they've got their anchor, I've called it before. They've got their security blanket of a partner, a house, a this and a that. So then is when they will approach somebody new and make up stories like, I'm with someone, but he's abusive, or something like that. They'll do that, which I don't know if that's what happened here, but that will happen. However, I guess the poster, who's anonymous, used to hang out with the friend, and typical, as I mentioned before, if his friend is with a cluster B person, they do not want outside influences around, because the outside influence could potentially ruin the whole game that's being played, which I've seen in my own experience countless times. But evidently, the bad person did not want his friend hanging out with this poster, and the friend said, well, so what, I'm going anyway, and went, which is defying the cluster B, which I've done as well. And you'll be punished if you do. Keep that in mind. But, and I understand the part about the financial aspect, because that's a common one with gay people, is they're in, or also with cluster B, they're in a poorly financial management state. And let's just say you are a young gay with a bunch of debt you can't handle, and you meet somebody who likes you and is attracted to you. Well, you might be tempted to be like, oh, help me, I'm in this terrible situation. And they, in this case, it sounds like what happens. And they'll use that for control. So they'll find a young kid who's in financial distress and say, hey, come with me, I'll take care of that for you. And then, of course, they think that gives them the right to control their behavior and moves. But evidently, when they were in a relationship with, I'm guessing the other person in the couple might have left, because I don't have all the details, but it sounds like his friend was now dating this person who was in a partnership with somebody else. And the bad person did not like the friend going out with this poster, so the bad person said, well, I'm going to go too. And so they all hung out together. But evidently, this poster could see signs of narcissistic abuse, or whatever you want to call it, and eventually those social interactions ended, which I imagine is a part of control, because the bad person would tell the friend, we don't need to hang out with him anymore, and would split off the contact because it's too dangerous. The deal here is the poster is saying he could recognize a lot of the same things going on with the friend. When you see people together, you can watch their interactions and pick up on, oh, he's controlling, oh, he's manipulating, oh, and you can see it like for what it is. Yet my poster is concerned that, I mean, we cover too how he assumed or believed something horrible would happen, which did. Smear campaign, where the friend who's innocent is labeled as the enemy and then blocked from all communication, which, again, I've seen on many occasions, as if you're blocked, you don't exist anymore, even though it's just in the online world, but that's a different story. But volume, he says that he had warned his friend that manipulation was occurring and that he had experienced the same thing. And that's something I responded back to him to tell him that is common. When the cluster B wants to capture someone, anybody who poses a threat is considered the villain. So the friend in question will be manipulated, such as told, well, fine, if you want to be friends with him and me, well, that's up to you, which is some kind of manipulation to get the friend to say, okay, I'll delete him. And that's control and manipulation. That's just the way it works, which is, again, sickening. But about the antidepressants, it sounds like maybe the friend realized on some level that he's not really in the ideal situation, so rather than be dumped or dump, he decided to take antidepressants so he could deal with this unnatural situation. But the poster is worried that might prolong the ordeal, because if you're drugged up on these drugs that these wonderful pharmaceutical companies create, then you might tolerate the damaging behavior longer. But he's worried about his friend because he's tried to reach out and tell him, I know what you're dealing with. He did it to me. He's doing it to you. And from my own experience, I've learned that that is the way it works. These controlling individuals will isolate you from your primary source of communications. They will try to turn you against them. They do not want you to interact with them if they might possibly uncover the scam that's being perpetrated. So it's just difficult, because if you say too much to your friend, you risk being labeled the troublemaker, which is very common for these types, which I've learned on a few occasions. These people basically spend their lives destroying others' lives, and in doing so, of course, they're going to get some bad press. Well, anytime bad press comes up, it's excused away from them, or by them, like, such as one I used to know would tell me one story, and then I would not think it was real, so I would pursue the other person involved, and then hear an entirely different, believable story, and I'd say, I knew that whatever happened, happened, and I just talked to so-and-so, which confirmed it happened. Why are you being phony? And of course they have typical responses like, well, he's lying. He wants to cause problems, which is all part of their game. Because when you deal with these people long enough, and you find enough discrepancies, and they continue to give that reaction, you start to wonder, wait a second. Why is it so many people are out there to cause destruction to you? Because it's not realistic. So the main question here is his last statement, which was, are there ways I could have handled this better when my friend and I were still in contact? And the answer I have to that, based on my own experiences, if you told what you thought, if you shared what you've been through, if you explained what was going on, you've done your due diligence. Because you have to realize, when you're dealing with the target of such an individual, the monster involved is very powerful. Remember, the monster zeroes in on every single slightest indication of the personality of the target and uses it to their advantage. If they slightly mention they like such and such subject, they bring that subject in and say they're into it too, because their goal is to appear to be like no one else the person's ever met before. Because, face it, when two people meet, it's very rare that they have the same belief systems and the same opinions and same views. It's very rare. But these narcopathic cluster B monsters know this, so they automatically adapt, and they seem like the exception. So it's a very powerful spell they cast over the target. So it's true, like I mentioned before, if they've cast the spell over the target and you come along and say, he's cast a spell on you, don't believe it, you'll look like the fool. You'll look like the troublemaker. you will look like the person who's trying to prevent him from having happiness when you know it's not the case. So my advice for this situation is, if you've done your due diligence, step back and just leave the door open to the person, stating, if something ever happens bad, I'm here for you. Period. And leave it there. Because if you go any further, you will play the role of the crazy ex or the crazy stalker who's doing whatever you're not doing. So that's what I believe. Because remember, these cluster B people, they know how to manipulate situations to create a fake villain such as yourself when they know you're trying to share the truth, but they're going to twist it as if you're trying to spread lies.
I'm sorry. I can't help it.